When that first consent decree came down on this island, it was unbelievable. It was just like the curtain of death hit us or something.
When Cape Point is closed, my community that's around in Buxton, they feel the business go down.
It's a documented fact that when a beach closes, it's an upsetting thing to an economy.
This seashore was created as a recreational area by Congress. Congress has never changed that.
There's some lady in Kansas right now, 78 years old, reading a paper that says, there they go, they're running through the dunes, or riding over bird nests, or they're killing this, or doing that. There's nobody doing anything like that out here.
If this is a nest of piping plovers, 1,000 meters in all directions is afforded protection. The diameter is 1.25 miles. It is unreasonable.
So what you have now is 1.25 miles around a nest. My God, that's a lot more than the President of the United States protection than he has.
What junk science is, it's incomplete or flawed information that is represented as being fact.
To sit here and watch a community be affected so negatively by special interest groups, I never thought it would happen in a million years.
We can provide for the animals, we can provide for the birds, we can provide for God's creatures. But we have to provide for God's other creatures, which are humans.
Blessed to have a 4.5-year-old young son. He said a blessing the other day. He said, "Dear Lord, bless Mommy, bless Daddy, bless my grandparents. But Lord, will you kill some of those birds?"
Everything's packed up, you're in the car, and you're crossing that bridge for the last time. You know it's the last time. And everything is behind you. Where are you if that ever happens?
I'm a crushed soul.
There is a place that lives in people's hearts and souls long after they've left it behind. A place with soft sands caressed by ocean waters. A place where sun and rain move in and out in a graceful dance. A place that echoes the song of laughter and whispers the secret of silence. That place is Hatteras Island. A place where you are surrounded by beauty. A place where there is some of the best fishing in the world. A place where people live. Just as a beach is made up of many individual grains of sand, Hatteras Island is made up of the many people who have lived and died here, and the many who still walk upon its beaches and call it home. A place where generations have added stitches to the quilt that's been passed down. A place loved by all who live here. A place where rich heritage is enjoyed, treasured, and nurtured.
It's a freight boat. Boat that brought freight in here in 1920. We're probably about the 9th or 10th generation. We come from people that come with the second boat into Jamestown and moved back into this area. In the area around Chowan County, first marriage in the free world, a Burris girl was one of the participants in that marriage. I was around uncles that were in 2 wars, and basically in World War II were in 2 theaters. They talked about their heritage here and how much it meant, and it became a huge part of what and who I am. This is 1923, and this picture was taken by the people that worked in the Army that worked for General Mitchell. And you can see they drew in a white marker where they planned to take the bombs. And they took a small craft, brought it in Hatteras Village. Here's the back of the house, and the store's right there. The real thing that keeps most of us here is that sense of heritage, the sense of belonging, the sense that I came from here, my ancestors came here, and we've been able to stay here, and it's a beautiful place to stay and be in.
Bye, Mr. Justin. He's going fishing. Wave to Mr. Justin. Wave at him. There you go.
My family has been here since the very early 1700s. They held some of the first land grants and land patents down here, which is really interesting to go back and see the documents and see a family name, back that long ago. We paid taxes to the king. I have family that were grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents that were lighthouse keepers. Several of them, which makes it really interesting to go back and read, their histories. And also life-saving station surfmen. My great-great-grandfather was surfman #1 at Cape Hatteras for many years, decades. And then as he got along in his years, he was able to transfer to Hatteras Inlet, which is about 5 miles south of us, where he was the keeper. And he was the keeper from 1905 until 1915 when the Coast Guard took over the U.S. Life-Saving Station. Oh!
I want down.
I want you to sit here for a minute. Look at me. Is that your store?
Mm-hmm.
You work here every day?
I want down.
You want down? You're nervous.
I want down.
You did very good playing. Thank you.
Where's your bee sting at?
Yeah, show Granddaddy. Oh, that bee got you right there.
Is it all better?
Bee stung you.
And Maybelle too. Got the puppy too. I think my parents were just as surprised as they could be when my brother and I both ended up coming back here after college, because we were both. I think every kid down here kind of goes through I want to see what else is out there, and then after a few years they come back, I want to be back here. This is where your people are buried. This is where your future is for generations to come. It's, I don't know what the word I'm searching for. It's your heritage, I guess, and that's hard. That's a hard thing to just pick up and leave.
Time moves on and history travels the world, its memories falling behind like shards from a broken mirror. We stare into the reflective glass and see ourselves. We are a product of our past, and our history shapes each of us into the people we become. Hatteras Island is a place where the memories of its rich past are reflected everywhere. Hatteras Island, a place that drew the first settlers to America. A place where thousands of ships lay in a dark, watery grave. A place where history has left footprints, large and small.
My ancestor came in the 1620s, and there was nothing here but Indians then, so he married an Indian, named her Mary. This has all come through Bibles and word of mouth through the years. And I have an old graveyard in Kennekeet, the Miller Kennekeet graveyard, and my great-great-grandmother and father are buried there. And he was born, my great-great-grandfather was born in the 1700s. I'll tell you a little story about my grandfather in slavery. He was very young in the Civil War, and there was a colored man here whose master was not very good to him. And my grandfather actually gave him a skiff when the war started to escape this man. And when I was about 5 years old, my mother and I were going to Raleigh to visit my aunt. She lives there. And we saw Scuppernong grapes alongside the road for sale. So my mother stopped, and this very old colored man was sitting there. And they got to talking, and he asked my mother where she was from, and she said Cape Hatteras. And the man started to cry. And I thought, gosh, what in the world did my mother say to this man? Anyway, it turned out he turned to her and he said, you know, during the war, a man gave me a skiff to escape the island. And he said, and I never did get the boat back to him, And my mother said, well, what was his name? And he said, Kit Miller. And my mother said, that was my father. They're good people, they're hardworking people. We grew up poor, we know how to work, honest. Most are church-going people. They're just good, down-to-earth Americans. Someone asked my mother if she knew how Hatteras Island was formed. And she said, yes. She says, I certainly do. You know, when God finished making everything, he had a handful of sand left. And he just threw it over, and that's Cape Hatteras. I've heard her tell that a many a time.
What is it about Hatteras Island that keeps you here?
It's the love of the best place in the world.
You can stand on that beach and you can look out and you can see within the scope of where your eyesight will carry you about 1,000 documented shipwrecks. There were 178,000 lives rescued by the United States Life Saving Service, which is the forerunner of the United States Coast Guard. You had a 99.8% chance of survival.
Wow.
That's better than a car.
Yeah. The HMS Swift, which had been abandoned in the Chesapeake Bay. Now that we've been looking through it, we found out that it's older than the Swift, HMS Swift. They found a coin, a 1623 coin in the concretion in here. But it's the oldest documented shipwreck in North Carolina that we know of, even older than the Queen Anne's Revenge.
These shoals right here often enough cause havoc for ships that in the past didn't have today's technology of how far to keep off, and invariably they would run aground, they would be stuck there, the continuing waves or a storm would break them up.
We have 225 years of history in this country, if you want to talk about from the time of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and that is important, that is critical to every man, woman, and child in this country. It belongs to us as Americans. It's American history.
In the 20s, we were discovered, so to speak, by the people that had lots and lots of money. They discovered the hunting and the fishing and the opportunities. When in the late 30s, a lot of those folks decided that they were going to protect ducks and geese, so they sold or made a deal with the government for some of their properties to go into a consortium that would protect ducks and fish and fishing and hunting and those type of things.
They started developing the park in the 40s and the 50s. They said they're going to build this park. This park will bring economy to you. We want you to take care of the tourists, build restaurants, stores, motels, take care of them. This is going to be a gem of a park to celebrate the seashore experience in our country.
Seashore was set up so that Americans, all types of Americans, not just the rich and the privileged, could come here and have access to the beaches of America.
So we're like, okay, not too bad. We like that. We're located right across the street from a National Park Service ramp, which is a beach access for four-wheel drive, and a campground. That's our bread and butter, really. That, because of that location, has helped us to be a successful business over the years.
In 1964, my father retired from the Army in Petersburg, Virginia, just south of Richmond. Came down here fishing with my uncle Robert from Chapel Hill, and Robert handed Daddy a fishing pole, said, "Ray, going over across the beach there, see if you can catch something." So 15 minutes, Donnie's heard me tell the story, 15 minutes after Daddy walks over the beach, he's got a 44-pound channel bass on line, got it in, and I mean, he got Hatteras fever from that point on, and drugged my mother down here kicking and screaming. She thought we were going to Florida, and we ended up out. She lived all over the world, and then ended up somewhere where now the closest McDonald's is 43 miles away.
Hatteras Island creates a harmonious symphony that plays the music of community and environment. Hatteras Island, a place where people love nature. A place where people celebrate friendship. A place where centuries meet decades in the people who call this place home.
So this is Pelican and Pelican.
So how did this come about?
Actually, it was all Kevin's idea.
Really?
It was the woman that wrote it, Sarah Frober, had written it as a story the night before. Kevin had helped build her studio, and she recited this story in front of like 30 people, and after she recited it, everybody was clapping and everybody was happy, and Kevin goes, "Kim, that would be an unbelievable children's book and you could illustrate it." And that's how it started. And so it was kind of like a dream come true. I never thought in a million years that I would ever live in a small town, because I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. And living in a small town is really nice. You drive down the road and you wave at everybody. You walk into a business, you know every person. It's just a very magical place, Hatteras Island, to live at. And I feel very fortunate to be able to live here and be an artist. This place is just so beautiful. It's the nature, it's so inspiring. And I draw the inshore fish and the birds on the island, and I illustrate children's books. This is a book I'm working on right now.
So how long does it take you to get to that, from blank page to where you are here?
That takes a month right there. Yeah.
Living in the city, walking in the street, look upon the faces, can't believe in what they see. Mother and she's watching, with a baby in her arms.
Jones Potion. This is they weren't even in the story, but she kind of let me do whatever I wanted artistically.
And so that's the band.
That's the band.
The music that we're hearing.
Yeah.
I'm moving on up.
I was born and raised on Hatteras Island, and I am a home builder down here and musician.
How long has your family been on the Hatteras Island?
Late 1700s, actually. They came from Ireland and went on to England, and then came to here and migrated up and down the East Coast from Wilmington as far as Canada, actually.
Now, do you have permission to wear a Jones Potion t-shirt?
Yeah. I had to get it from my bass player. My father was a commercial fisherman for quite some time, and his father was, and his father as well.
How long has it been? I'm moving on up. I'm moving on up.
Jones Potion would like to thank Jim Beam.
Yeah, man. I'm here obviously because my people are from here. To me, it's one of the best places in the world. It's a group of people that have weathered a ton of storms and community type situations, and they just power through it. They're strong people,
Everybody knows everybody, everybody cares about everybody, everybody takes care of everyone else. It's just always been that way around here, I guess.
I'm moving on up.
My family's been here since the early to mid 1700s. There's actually a graveyard on the north end of the village here. It's 1732. Yeah, whatever. So I know we've been here at least that long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Natasha?
I don't I couldn't tell you exactly how long, but as far back as you can research my history,
So
both sides of my family go back, and they've done the research with.
So several hundred years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Several hundred years.
What happened today in school?
Well,
Did you lose something? You lost a tooth. Show us that.
Oh, man.
Look at that.
And it's, I think, turning silver.
Silver?
Somebody's going to get visited by the tooth fairy tonight.
I think that he's going to give me $500.
Well, we've known them since they were little babies, but the females are the ones that quack, and the boys are the ones that they talk a lot, but they're not as chatty as the girls. My father and my family moved here in 1966. He was in the Coast Guard. Like typical military families, we moved all around, and we finally settled here, and then he retired here, and this was our final destination, so this became our home. I was 9 years old at the time. And when we moved here, there wasn't a whole lot here. Our school was all consolidated from kindergarten through 12th, and so you instantly knew everybody.
Yeah.
And so they became your family. A couple of these we're going to have to monitor pretty close because they're special needs, like I said, and they can't fly. And it could happen right at birth, but it's basically kind of a lazy wing. It might have gotten dinged when it was a baby, but or it might not have the strength, or it just might have been dislocated or something. But it happens to be their flight feathers.
Right.
And so short of re-breaking it and trying to set it,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think she'll be able to fly. And we have kind of gone round and round of what to do with it. Right now we're just kind of trying to keep it trimmed and keep her from injuring it anymore. Even though I'm not originally from here or born here, this is my home. I feel like I belong here. I feel like I'm related to everybody here. And it really takes on a new meaning when stuff like the storms or anything, any kind of issues that hit anybody, whether it's an injury or illness or a storm or nature or whatever, people really tend to cling to each other here and protect each other.
Over the years, storms have ravaged this slender and sandy land. Each time, the people of Hatteras Island pick themselves up and rebuild, holding to the promise of a new dawn.
I actually wasn't on the island for Isabel. I was at college. With that storm in particular, getting back here was a huge issue. All of my family was here, my dad. They were isolated for that long period of time, and getting here wasn't an option at all until they got the roads back together and the bridge was open.
You better be prepared to be without electricity, to be without water, to find your house, your place of business in disarray.
This pool was completely filled with sand. Every piece of furniture here was knotted all together, and of course the fence was knocked down. The waves were coming in here, hitting this building, back of you now, knocked out the back window and went through that building. There were about 5 feet. Everything in it was destroyed. The building that is back of you, the doors were knocked down and everything in that bottom floor was destroyed.
I was here when Isabel came through and cut us off from the rest of the island and the rest of the world. Fortunately, our kids weren't. We had evacuated them, but we were here ourselves and with my in-laws and such, and it was a hard time.
So if you go away, you take the risk of not being able to get back. Staying here, it's inconvenient, but at least you can get with things. This is your home.
And I had an old house that was here on the same plot of land right now, and it completely got flooded. It was waist deep in there. Yeah, just ruined the whole house. Yeah, it was an old house. It had been in my family since it was 1893 when it was built.
Well, actually, Isabel was it was a Class 3 hurricane, but the one before that, Emily, in 1993, was devastating. The building you're standing on was totaled. We lost units at the motel. Every existing unit that had been there since the 50s was gone. It didn't create the inlet that Isabel did, but as far as the economic damage and the injury of the island and the people's homes, and it destroyed the school, it was our Katrina.
Some of them, Hurricane Emily, for example, put 4 feet of water in the store in here. We were almost up to your belly button in water, and you walk in one morning and it took 3 weeks of just cleaning this store out.
Basically, you pick up everything, you tie everything down, and you just ride it out. Watch the tide come up, and you watch it go back out, and you go check to see what you got left. And whatever has to be cleaned up, you clean up, and you go on.
Yes, it can be pretty horrific at the time, but you just pick it up and deal and move on from that point. And you have a certain pride in being able to do that.
We're known on these banks as some of the toughest people you'll ever meet. And we are, and it's a good thing we are, because we have to be.
There's Kevin.
Hey, Kevin. How are we doing?
Doing good.
How are you? Oh, out doing a little charity work.
I met my husband at the lighthouse in 1985. I was down here vacationing in Hatteras, and then I saw Kevin surfing in the water. And then he came in, and it was like love at first sight when I saw him. So, and then we met on the beach and just instantly connected, and so fell in love. And then I moved down after I graduated from college.
I've been married for 33 years. I have 3 kids, and they all live in Richmond, Virginia, which is where I come from. I've been here for almost 7 years. We own Finnegan's restaurant, arguably the closest business to the point. You might say we wound up with a bit of an empty nest syndrome ourselves, and we just kind of wanted to be someplace else and do something different, and this opportunity presented itself to us. For us, it was a dream come true to be in our spot, you know. All right, let me get a grip.
Hey, mister, can't you see? You can't take this away from me. 'Cause I work too hard my whole damn life to give it to you overnight.
Throughout its history, the people of Hatteras Island have seen storms and hurricanes blow in with fierce determination. They've watched as ships were overtaken and men drowned. But now a new kind of storm is hitting their beaches, and this one has a human face. Hatteras Island, a place where judges rule, a place where recreational history is being changed by a handful of people, a place where people are sometimes not allowed on their beach.
I'm a soldier of this nation. You know, I fought in Vietnam. You know, I fought for the rights of people, you know, to have access to things, free access to things. This national seashore was set aside, deliberately set aside for people like me and my grandchildren. I'm not a rich man, and there are a lot of people who aren't rich. We can't afford our islands. And that was understood back in the Depression of the 1920s and 30s. One reason this island was set aside is that hardworking citizens could bring their families here and always have access to the national seashore.
If this is a nest of piping plovers, 1,000 meters in all directions is afforded protection. The diameter is 1.25 miles. It is unreasonable.
So what you have now is 1.25 miles around a nest. My God, that's a lot more than the President of the United States protection than he has, you know. I mean, just to give it some kind of relevance, around the White House, you don't have any kind of protection like that, and yet this bird is afforded that kind of protection.
Ostensibly, the idea is to protect the birds, and certainly measures are needed for that and have been in place to do that.
As far as hurting the beach goes, forget about the birds, forget about all the other stuff. We've been living here for all these years. Nobody's ever had a real problem with any kind of closures, as long as it didn't stop all the traffic. They always stop the beaches on the biggest day of the year, 4th of July or Memorial Day or something. They always close the mess down right when the biggest amount of season and tourist is here, and tourism is where we make our money.
We've been pushed into a situation where the 67% of our beaches, the 4th of July of this year, were inaccessible. Now, that doesn't mean they were all closed.
The point's open, but you can't get to it. So it's not really doing us any good.
We'll have a closed beach here, a closed beach here, and an open beach, but no through corridor to get to it. So in the statistics they're saying you have a certain amount of miles of beaches that are open, yet you can't get to them.
Cape Point, for instance, was open during some of that time, but the only way you could get there was with a boat, and the Park Service made a decree that they couldn't get rescue people in there like they needed to, so you couldn't go to Cape Point. Those are the ways that they used to block our access all the way through. All we've asked for in situations like that is a corridor around, so that we could get around the nest and get to places that are open and take advantage of it, but that's not been the case.
I don't believe that you'll see as many people arguing if they had a corridor to go to the point or to different fishing spots.
In most areas, the main protected area is only 200 meters. But in this park, they give them 1,000 meters for the endangered bird. In some parks, they just rope the nest off. Exactly.
And so that's my biggest concern, is they're closing beaches that should be open because there's no threatened or endangered bird on that part of the beach. I know not one person that would go out there and run over a piping plover or a nest intentionally. There's no way in the world. I mean, these people want to be on the beach. They're not going to do anything to jeopardize not being on the beach.
We were out on the point twice already, and you know, people are fishing and the birds are running around. You know,
yeah.
The birds running between people's legs.
And one of the things that gets me is now we see, you know, I fish every day, 6 days a week, 2 trips a day for 4 or 5 months. So I see it. I'm out there every day. And the point down here, when they had this Hatteras Point closed off and the Buxton Point, you go by there and you see, I mean, you know, it's a gargantuous area that they have closed off for maybe 4 birds, you know, this big, you know.
One of the issues I have with you know, the beach being closed is the birds that are non-threatened are they're not endangered, they're actually on the concerned list, are getting the same status, the same protection as the birds that are endangered. If they lay a nest in an area, they'll close off a 1,000-meter area around that nest for a non-endangered bird.
Junk science is a term that came into its own about late 1980s, early 1990s. Famous book called Junk Science in the Courtroom. And what junk science is, it's incomplete or flawed information that is represented as being fact.
The scientific process is you gather and collate data and form theories and hypotheses. You write them up, publish them in a professional journal, and then let the other professionals tear it to pieces.
Science is a body of information that explains how the world around us works. Science answers the question how. All science is based on scientific method, which is hypothesis testing, which is measurement, which is data collection. Simply because somebody like myself, the titled doctor, makes a statement, it doesn't make it science.
In this case here, we've had somebody, and who knows who it was, simply state that we need a 1,000-meter buffer around fledgling chicks, and nobody had the chance to comment on it. Nobody had it was never published. There was no peer review. Somebody pronounced it, and yay, therefore it is.
You take a look at these closures, especially these 1,000-meter boundaries, and you say, okay, where's your data? Where's the data that supports that boundary closure?
All that's done by Park Service. Everything that you get back in this issue comes from the people who are doing it to you.
Yeah, we like to see environmental impacts, but we like to see good science. We don't like to see junk science down here. We don't like to see politics down here. We want to see real facts. We want to see the truth.
Somebody will say, well, it was a statement the federal government made back in 1994. You go back to look at that statement, you say, what's the basis for the statement? Where's the data? You find out there isn't any. It's simply somebody with the title doctor who said, well, here's what I think we ought to do. You can't call that science. If you use that as science basis, it is junk science. It's incomplete information.
The best example of that is birds that are nesting on the islands in the sound off the park, and to not include those in the bird counts when you can almost throw a stone from the islands to the park and then say, well, these are not part of the same ecosystem, when those islands are critical habitat for the piping plover, which rarely nest on those islands, and yet we can't include them in looking at the overall numbers of birds. It's that selective nature of providing scientific information that makes it not science.
2 previous years, the Turner Island that we're going to, there was probably 4 to 5, maybe 600 birds using that dredge island that they pumped. And this Pelican Island that we're going to, there's going to be some birds left there, but 2 months ago when they were nesting and raising their young, a lot of them have flown off now, there was probably 500 to 800 birds using that island. This is only the second island that we've looked at, and you've seen how many birds are on these islands. If I had to guess, between probably Portsmouth Island and Oregon Inlet, there's probably 75 to 100 different islands scattered about.
A farmer once decided to count the individual grains on a staff of wheat. Now he knew how much wheat he had and realized he would starve. He cried over this misfortune, but he forgot to include the large field around him. Hatteras Island, a place where birds thrive. A place where government agencies ignore what doesn't suit them.
If they really wanted to get more birds, they could.
Well, that's the that. They could work with the state and create more dredge islands. They could do things like that. They could help.
Because we asked Scott if they could do, they could do that, and then the birds are out there. But because they're on the sound, they don't count them because they're not in the park.
And if they're not like nesting at Cape Point, they're supposed to nest at Cape Point. There's only average about 10 breeding pairs a year forever. This is a beautiful birds of Mexico that I've had forever. There's a nice Sibley book. Sea beans from the tropics.
Earth hater.
Yeah, we hate everything.
We want some common sense. And through this whole process, people always ask me, it's like, well, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that?
Let me tell you just a little common sense here. When they stopped the people in the cars going by the birds, especially at the point, that's when the animals, the predators, started destroying the nests.
They said they wanted to protect it and rope it off and keep people out to protect the birds, which all it did was eliminate habitat and create habitat for the predators.
So in effect, the Park Service has allowed vegetation to grow and destroyed breeding habitat. These are aerial photographs taken in May of this year that show the closures at Cape Point and very dramatically show the vegetation that encircles this man-made pond and all up in here.
All this vegetation right here, the dunes that never existed before, until they put the enclosures up and they stopped people from driving out here. So since they put up all the enclosures and people couldn't drive on the beach, the vegetation in the dunes grew up, and it is not conducive for the shorebirds to nest.
Years ago, when this area was a very successful nesting habitat for shorebirds and piping plovers, there was no vegetation in these areas. Then the Park Service started to close off the interior of Cape Point for wintering birds, and the vegetation grew, and it's now no longer attractive habitat for the birds to nest in.
So they've made a hostile environment for these shorebirds to nest in. They want to force them closer to the ocean, closer to ocean overwash, closer for the predators to get them. It's a complete disaster for the shorebirds to nest.
The birds have effectively found other places to nest, and the environmentalists are blaming the ORV community for chasing the birds out of the area, when in fact it's the lack of habitat because of Park Service's management of the areas or mismanagement of it.
And also because of the vegetation, the predators moved in, and even on their list of things, predators and weather are the main reason for the decline of the bird population out there. They don't list loss of habitat because that's kind of self-inflicted.
Wherever a turtle lays the egg, then that part of the beach gets closed at some time. And there's already a very aggressive program to find the nest and protect the nest and close the beach for them. That's working quite well without the additional restrictions that are being proposed.
Why is Park Service beating us slammed to death over something that's not being harmed in the first place?
There are ways it's done differently even in Pea Island Refuge, 50 miles up the beach. It comes under different jurisdictions.
It's amazing that two federal agencies, both under the Department of Interior, handle turtles so differently. At Pea Island, our runway is 1 foot wide. At the seashore, the closures in an ORV area are 350 feet wide. I mean, it defies logic. At Pea Island, people can walk 20 feet from a nest, and it's no big deal because Turtle Watch comes out and smooths out the pathway. We go out an hour before sunset, put plastic garden edging around the nest and a wire cage over the nest.
The turtles, when they come out, they're going to wait until dark, and there's actually one down in a hole there that I could see while there was light here. He's waiting for it to get dark.
These turtles hatch only at night. It's a rare, rare occasion when they hatch during the daytime.
When he gets ready, he's going to climb out to the surface and hopefully crawl down and into the ocean.
The Florida beaches, where 90% of the sea turtle nesting takes place, are open to the public all day long. They have upwards to 600 nests per mile. Our best year at the seashore is something less than 2 nests per mile. So we're a very marginal area. I can't imagine that the survival of the species depends on the success of nesting here. In Florida, the public is allowed unfettered use of the beaches. Our visitors get fined $150 for walking maybe 200 feet in front of a nest that is doing no damage. It's the most visitor-unfriendly situation I can think of.
The number one solution would be to create an environment where cooperation could take place. To start with a goal of having people be part of the equation. Not what can we cut out, but how can we have both the resource and the people's access to the area. And after all, that's what a national park is.
In the program at Pea Island, there's tire tracks on the beach there. It's not from recreational ORV use, it's from ATVs patrolling for turtles and doing bird counts. Sometimes there are more tire tracks on the beach there than there are on stretches of the beach here in the seashore with ORV use. In the path of a hatchling coming from a nest into the ocean, everything is smoothed out every night. It's no big deal. That type of program could be used at the seashore and virtually eliminate the daytime closures of large stretches of beach. Humans are a part of the environment as well.
Cape Point, it's going to get overwashed here in 3 days like it hasn't seen in years.
We didn't have any storms in 2009. No hurricane made landfall or was within 400 miles of the East Coast in 2009. But this park still lost 35% of the nests. That's unconscionable.
Move them, move them, move them, move them. I've studied turtles in Australia, Indonesia, Panama, Mexico, Costa Rica. I went out of my way to go to different farms and talk to people on the beaches and stuff. And right now 30, 40, 50, 60 nests gone. Right now they're sitting there, they're gone. They should have been relocated if they're that worried about the turtles and stuff. Make it right.
We need to change the criteria for relocation of nests. We need to have relocation areas where these nests are moved to, rather than just moving them on the same beach a little further away from the high tide line.
Natural beauty belongs to no one person. It's a gift to all who behold it. The people of Hatteras Island have opened their arms in welcome to thousands of visitors each year, happy to share their home for a spell. They support one another like the bush holds the rose up to the light, but now this bush has sprouted thorns. Hatteras Island, a place where people live, a place where those same people are finding themselves bruised.
Tourism is our lifeblood. Even the perception of closings is a major problem. And when we keep talking about the closed beaches and how the restrictions are there, a lot of these small closings prevent people from coming down. I've had friends in Virginia and Richmond call just because they heard whispers of it at this point, saying, I'm canceling my vacation and not coming down. You know, you repeat that over and over again, it becomes it creates a serious economic impact.
I'm actually leaving after Labor Day. I'm leaving my family. I have to survive, because the tourism here drops off after Labor Day, and this business won't make it. I was just in Savannah. I opened a business there to survive because the economic injury here has been so bad. My husband's working 14, 15-hour days. Our children are involved in all of our businesses. I've laid off all but 2 employees.
I'm down 4 employees. You don't think it doesn't hurt? Go out and look at anybody that works with you or for you. Go ahead and say, I'm sorry. You don't have a job anymore.
There's people that are losing jobs, losing their houses, moving because they can't make ends meet with the closures.
Right now, my house is, I've been fighting foreclosure on my house for since November. I had to lay everybody off, everybody.
Tragedy days.
This is a CD cover from a CD. We actually did another song called Hear My Voice, which was about the Virginia Tech massacre.
You got the April 16th at Virginia Tech?
Yeah, the day that it happened. Anyhow, if you can check us out on Facebook, in probably another couple of weeks, we're going to have a song called Insanity. Okay, the chorus goes on about how the Park Service has basically created a habitat where only plover can exist. All the humans basically take second fiddle to the plover environment. The whole species revolves around the plover. So, the name of the song is called Insanity. So,
okay.
Check it out.
It's Facebook, Blistered on Facebook.
Yeah, Blistered on Facebook.
The government declared the beach a holy shrine. They made a habitat where only plover die. No!
32 years of doing this, I've been told by Park Service that I'm young enough to go out and find and learn to do something else. I don't know anything else except fishing tackle.
I just see it, so many people around here struggling business-wise, and then now that they're trying to stretch that perimeter to close off the one place that I serve, the one place where my living is, it's definitely, it hurts my feelings, one, and I just wish there was something to do about it.
I was building 6 to 7 homes a year, and it drops down to 1, and whatever you can pick up, you know, it's definitely not what it was.
We've had 3 particular areas that have been closed, and they have a dramatic effect on the tourism on those villages. The first one is Ramp 23, which is the first ramp south of Salvo. That is their Cape Point. That was closed for 3 months. The other one is Cape Point, which we're here right now. And when Cape Point is closed, my community that's around in Buxton, they feel the business go down.
Now that we've all seen the Gulf oil spill, it seems pretty clear how upset people can get over a closed beach. Media recognizes it. I've seen them in talking to restaurants, really all kinds of walks of life. The mayors and the municipal authorities are concerned because they know that that means revenue to them. So it's a documented fact that when a beach closes, it's an upsetting thing to an economy. But out here, when our beaches have closed and we've tried to stop it or speak out about it, people, I've seen comments in the newspapers, why are you getting so angry?
Park Service, let's sit up yonder and say, there's no harm. You know, it's just a few tackle shop owners and a few people that are hurt. And it's just a damn lie. And I don't mind it being a lie. I mind it being a lie that's created to give a point of view that's going to keep us closed forever.
People come every year for vacations. Every year they come back because they love it just as much. And they're just as impacted as we are. They're looking to other places to go now because they can't do the things they did before. They can't go the places they went. And it's getting harder. we're losing business. We're losing money every year. It used to be that we would start around Easter time and pretty much ramp up the whole way through until you got to the time where kids got out of school in June and we're at 100% occupancy. But now that doesn't happen any longer.
People away from here don't really understand what's going on, and they think every beach is shut.
We saw and heard and witnessed so many people coming in here saying they weren't coming back. And believe me, a lot of them didn't. We just hand them a little piece of literature and point them to the sign and say, call your congressman, and do everything you can to help us. And they just didn't know before they even got here that their favorite beach or whatever spot was closed. And so they were upset that they had rented a house for the week and had come down to a place where they weren't able to enjoy their vacation to its fullest.
People that visit that time of year are people that enjoy the beaches, and if they can't get there, then in many cases they're just choosing other destinations.
So they quit coming. And a lot of the businesses on the island have been affected very badly.
The economic impact that occurred here is so severe that many people lost their jobs. Most of the businesses here are reporting losses of upwards of 60%.
My business is off 40% this year. Don't think I'll ever be able to retire. I've already wasted my retirement on trying to maintain my business and my status quo as it was up until this mess.
I've been here 23 years. I would like to hope that some of my family could take it over and pay me rent that I could retire with. This is my 401k.
It's not a good feeling. I go to bed some nights looking into my future and there's no security. And it's a bad thing to sit here and work all your life, be really successful, be really respected for what you do, but you don't have options. Your 401ks, all of that stuff are used up.
It's not only the business being down, but it's also having that threat of we might close it down.
You just don't know the suffering and anguish, the mental anguish that this has bestowed upon us.
If Hatteras Island loses the shoulder seasons of March, April, May, September, October, and November and December, if we lose those seasons, the cost of people coming in the summertime is going to have to double. I can see that the spiraling cost due to the inability to drive on Hatteras Island is just going to be beyond belief of what we'll be able to do with.
My son's leaving for Japan tomorrow, and with my grandson, he can't get work here. And I probably won't be a part of my grandson's life because of that.
And that's one of the travesties in all this, is that here they've got all this rich heritage that belongs to them, but they're being dictated to whether or not it's going to play into them raising their children or not. And that's a scary thing. I'm not going to stand for it.
If you've got kids, you go through it all the time thinking about what can I do to make his life easier than what our life is. And right now, I can't teach him what I know. What I know is not surviving. What am I going to do, teach him to be a turtle observer?
This seashore was created as a recreational area by Congress. Congress has never changed that. The Park Service has deleted the name recreational, and we have become second-class citizens here.
Rob, with everything that's going on right now with these closures and how they impact the people and the economy so badly, why does Park Services continue to do this?
What's the environmentalist?
Just a little more of your time. Just a little bit. I get a feeling that you don't want me around. I get a feeling that you don't want me around. I get a feeling that you don't want me around. But just a little.
Ugliness can easily be masked as beauty. Loving nature and protecting wildlife are noble stations, but actions draw you beneath the surface into a sea of greed, lies, and avarice. Hatteras Island, a place where environmentalists reign. A place where deception is excused for special interest groups. A place where the people have no voice.
When that first consent decree came down on this island, it was unbelievable. It was just like the curtain of death hit us or something.
At that point in time, it was an unprecedented beach closure.
I am very angry at what has happened to this community here on Hatteras Island. Southern Environmental Law Center, the Audubon Society, and the Defenders of Wildlife came.
We call them the Big Three, the dark side. These people have got their names attached to every controversial thing we have on this island, whether it's building of a soccer field, our water rights, our bridge.
People are suffering economically. They are suffering personally. This is really a difficult time period for this island. I am begging and pleading for anybody to help us here.
Back in 1972, under President Nixon, an executive order was signed by him saying to all the national parks that if you're going to allow ORV driving in those parks, you will need a special use regulation. The local National Park Service went ahead and responded with a draft ORV management plan for the seashore. Even back then, they were calling for over 50% of the ORV driving access to be prohibited. That's when the Outer Banks Preservation Association was formed. It was an effort by local business people, residents, and visitors who objected to the heavy-handedness of the government to close off 50% of the beach. The Outer Banks Preservation Association responded to that draft management plan and wrote a plan of its own. After that, it was sent to the Park Service, and the Park Service sent it up to Washington.
We thought that it had been approved, but found that no, it had never been signed off by the people in Washington, D.C., and possibly even Atlanta, and we don't know where or when it got lost.
For 35 years, the National Park Service did not do anything about it. They showed ineptness, inaction, and they just didn't follow up.
They had a plan because everything was working. But that was the key for Audubon, Defenders of Wildlife, and Southern Environmental Law Center to sue. They said they didn't have an ORV plan, but everything was working. The birds had their enclosures, the turtles were getting protected. I've witnessed this for 25 years. But they come in and say that nothing like this was going on, which is wrong.
In October of 2007, Audubon Society, Defenders of Wildlife, represented by Southern Environmental Law Center, sued the federal government because there was not a special use regulation that we had talked about.
The judge stepped in and he wanted to close all the beach, and rather than him do that, there was a decree and it said that certain things had to take place, and some of it was the condition around the nest, or how much footage you had around the nest, and we didn't have a choice but to do it.
Either sign it and have some sort of recreational opportunities, or if you don't sign it, we'll close it down. Those were the choices, two choices.
Right now there's a consent decree in place, which was a result of a lawsuit between Defenders and Audubon and the National Park Service. There's a consent decree in place that has been crippling to this island.
There is a different designation. When Congress makes a recreational area, that's not a national park. And it is designated a recreational area. And so the very first part of what the description of recreational area is that resource protection is not the paramount issue. The recreation is. And Park Service just has thrown that out. They have decided that it's not going to be a recreational area.
What they've done is illegal.
They've broken their word. And
Not only their word, but it's it's a recreational national seashore. It is a congressional law that has been broken. I mean, it's that simple.
The Park Service is actually in violation of several federal laws, the least of which is the enabling legislation and also the Redwood Amendment that specifically states that the Park Service cannot conduct an activity on this seashore that results in significant derogation of the mission established by Congress for this area unless they have direct and specific authorization of Congress.
It really has caused a complete and total economic collapse. And I'm 53, so I don't understand I can tell you how it happened. We don't have a voice.
I think it's because you're a small community, and they knew that you wouldn't have the resources to find them.
Well, and you don't have a voice, and that's why what we hope people do is they see this and they contact their senators and their congressmen, because it's something that affects everybody.
It is a big deal. This is a national issue, not a local issue by any stretch of the imagination.
It isn't constitutional what they've done, because a judge doesn't have that kind of power. I don't care if he is a federal judge.
The relief to the consent decree is going to be the superintendent's new rule on off-road vehicle management, which is actually going to be worse, stronger than the consent decree.
Not only does this affect ORV driving, which is the mainstay of our economy, but it also affects the pedestrian access.
Well, I'd have a very hard time with that because I've had hip replacement surgery and I can get around okay, but soft sand is another issue.
ORV access and pedestrian access, they're one and the same. This park is so big, it is so long in distance that ORVs are almost required, that people who are physically challenged, people who want to get to the favorite fishing holes, you need an ORV. You have the government didn't do their job for 35 years. Audubon, Defenders of Wildlife come by and sue. Then we have a consent decree. You have a dual mandate. And one mandate says protect the natural resources. Everybody agrees on that. Protecting nesting birds is fine. The other side of this mandate is to provide for current and future recreational opportunities. That has been squandered. They have turned a blind eye to access. Access means everything to everybody down here. This is how we live. This is how we have to flourish. I charge that the Park Service is shirking their responsibilities. They have not done hardly anything about providing for present day recreation and future recreational opportunities because they've been so preoccupied with the legal mess. Groups like Audubon and Defenders come in and they want to be the resource managers.
And their solution to all this is to kick the people off the beach, kick the vehicles off the beach, and then trap and kill any of the predators that are out there.
The lady that goes to my church actually was there with her children when they saw this Park Service kill this fox on the beach.
That's what kills me about the thing they got going on now. All the other animals that they are killing, it's not letting Mother Nature take its course.
When you remove a predator from any environment, things get out of balance.
Two types of leg traps that indiscriminately will trap any kind of animal. Who's to say a bird might not get caught in it or somebody's pet? This has happened.
We have actually seen traps with feet left in them where the animals have gnawed their foot off to get out of the trap.
These Audubon people, the Defenders, call themselves Defenders of Wildlife and are out there being the cause of hundreds of others being killed. It just doesn't make sense.
There's some lady in Kansas right now, 78 years old, reading the paper that says, there they go, they're running through the dunes, they're riding over bird nests, or they're killing this, or doing that. There's nobody doing anything like that out here. And some poor lady in Kansas is getting fooled again. She's sitting there writing Audubon a check.
I just can't even really believe that this is happening in the United States of America.
When you go to bed at night, the traps are getting set. When you wake up in the morning, they're killing the animals.
What we're showing is an animal coming through this when he hits the trigger with his head. What's the difference between ethical trapping and unethical trapping?
Using the proper techniques for the right situation. They're just using techniques all the way around that's just completely unethical. I mean, they're using cage traps to catch house cats or feral cats, using them to catch some raccoons and stuff. A lot of them are using kill traps, which are in the 220 size, which are about 7.5 inch jaw spread, which the animal actually puts his head through and body through.
And they're using those traps on the National Seashore right now?
Yes, sir. This is what they're using right now for doing mink trapping. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll take a T-bar up here. I'm a charter boat mate down here, and then also I have a wildlife control business, which I do the private sector in the summertime. Then in the wintertime I'm doing work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, doing a Red Wolf Recovery Act. I actually foot trap wolves with 0 foot damage whatsoever with the traps that I use. What happens is when that animal's down here on the bank, he gets caught. What he's going to do is he's going to try to go up on the bank. He can only come so tight. After that, he goes back in the water. And the first place he goes is right on down there in the deep water.
So the animal is actually making the trek down, and then once he gets in the deep water,
he cannot come back up.
He can't come back up.
Yes. Yeah, this mentality of being a trapper is a bad person. Thing is, we're all trying to be ethical. We do have to harvest these animals, because if you do not control, we're going to have an overabundance. There's going to be rabies outbreaks. We've already got them up the beach. When that animal's there, when he hits it, it comes right down on his neck, and it holds him. Domestic animal is not going to fight a snare. Wild animals, on the other hand, are a completely different thing. They actually will fight. This is a relaxing lock, which I use for catching coyotes for the Fish and Wildlife. It relaxes constantly. The animal can pull, and then it lets right off. It does not choke them down. The snares that the Park Service is actually using, but is a keel lock. That lock has no give whatsoever to it. The harder you pull, the tighter it goes, constantly. So that animal actually basically chokes itself down.
Is that lock a lot cheaper?
No.
So
it's all in the discretion of what kind of situation you want to use it as.
So in this situation, they want to kill the animals.
Mm-hmm.
To your knowledge, is the Audubon aware of the actual killings?
Oh yes. They know all about it. That's what their main goal is. Their goal is to protect those birds. In the show, show how good a job they're doing protecting those birds. They know exactly how many animals they're taking off the properties every year.
Have they ever had to answer it publicly, from what you know? I mean, doesn't anybody ever come to them and say, why are all these other animals being killed to save the birds?
No, because they're considered Audubon Society. They look like they're the golden child of everything. They're doing a great job for saving birds. Why would you question something that does such a good program? And the underlining is doing a lot of killing for nothing. A lot of it's out of sight, out of mind. You'll never hear a single thing about it unless you dig really deep. And unfortunately, I've done a lot of that over the years, trying to find work for myself. So from my understanding of everything, they want the job done and do not care how it is being done, as long as they're getting the job done.
I used to consider myself an environmentalist, and I'm not so sure I categorize myself that now. I'm more of a conservationist. I'm interested in wildlife and concerned about it, but many of these national environmental groups have become so radical that I don't want to be a part of it. It's birds before babies.
Unfortunately, when faced with the draconian measures that have been proposed, then even those people like myself who've worked all their lives to protect the animals and the plants get where you don't really care that much about them anymore.
And I hate to say it, it's not like we're against wildlife, that's not what I mean. It's they've put a bad taste in our mouth, the special interest groups. It's unfortunate. Shouldn't be that way.
Certainly they're environmentally minded. They wouldn't want to be called environmentalists because of what they perceive other environmentalists are doing to them, but they are.
I am an environmentalist. I am a conservationist. Having said that, I do not agree with the mindset of these conservation groups.
I've got a 4.5-year-old young son. He said a blessing the other day. He said, "Dear Lord, bless Mommy, bless Daddy, bless my grandparents. But Lord, will you kill some of those birds? And what it means is he's growing up in an environment that is so anti-Park Service and environmental, he's not going to be green.
I'm a former science teacher, and all of my life I was taught that decisions should be based on fact and on reason. And when I see some of the pseudoscience, BS science, whatever you want to call it, that obviously isn't science, and I look at the kids that are growing up here, and I know that they're looking at that, and I ask myself, how can the teachers, how can their parents, how can anyone make them believe that science is anything other than politics?
I've got conservation awards from Al Gore, from the National Audubon Society. That's a hard one. In my past, I'm a great conservationist. I'm not that today. These people are not here about conservation. It's not about birds. It's not about turtles.
Like I said before, it's not about the wildlife. Some money in your pocket.
I once heard the head of SELC say, you know, we got a lot invested in Dare County. Well, they ain't got a lot invested in Dare County. They made a whole lot of money in Dare County.
These organizations have grown big and they have grown rich, and they have enormous power and influence on the national parks, the national systems, especially the Department of Interior in how things are done and operated.
It's criminal when it comes down to it, because let's face it, we're an island of 5,000 people, and how are we gonna go up against an army of high-dollar lawyers and a lot of political backing with slingshots? I mean, it's just really, really difficult, and it's really disheartening.
There ought to be equity and balance in this, and it shouldn't be one small group of elitists telling the rest of us how to live.
I really feel that the group that is opposing public access out here and is trying to so severely restrict the access is motivated primarily by money. These are a bunch of third-party intervener lawyers who have made their career out of suing the government under the Endangered Species Act. And if you are familiar with the Endangered Species Act, you know that Congress passed that wisely, intending that it would protect endangered species. In fact, the piece of legislation has fallen short of what its stated goals were, and it has instead become a lawyer's relief bill.
They make their money from crisis. They don't make their money from caring about the resource.
The ultimate solution is going to depend on being able to rewrite or repeal that piece of failed legislation and put something in place that will protect endangered species, all the while enhancing public access and facilitating public use of the resources of our country. Look at the Gulf oil down there, for example. If we don't get that, somebody else is going to get it. We're not going to stop offshore drilling. We're fighting here for a bridge to Hatteras Island as a matter of public access. That has been delayed for over 15 years.
Herbert C. Bonner Bridge, the bridge that gets us off of this island and gives us access to the outside world. It's not only the roadway, it's the power lines and the data lines and cable, and all our communication lines run under that bridge.
It is truly the lifeline to this island, and I have a very personal connection with this bridge. My grandfather was the engineer. He was second in command engineer on building that bridge, and he knew that bridge would bring the modern age to his wife's family and her community, because my grandmother is from here and he was not here. And they built a bridge that would last 30 or so years, because they knew in this harsh environment that would be about all it would get before a new bridge needed to be built.
Rating of the bridge, it's called the sufficiency rating, and the rating is right now sitting at a 2 out of 100. We've had engineers that have told us that it's essential, that it's a necessity, I think was their word, that it be replaced by 2016. And if we face any further delays, then that's the year we're facing right now.
It's going to fall in, and it's going to, one of these days, and it could very well be a family going across there. You know, a mother and her children going across the bridge.
with the pilings being, literally some of the divers talked about being able to walk under them. That's not a good feeling. And the local people will tell you that if you're behind some heavy vehicles, you want to give yourself some space. From a safety standpoint, it's wrong.
To tell you the truth, I rolled down my windows just to have an exit strategy. I was like, I have 3 grandchildren. My daughter's in college. I'm not quite finished on this earth.
I cross my fingers every time I drive over it, especially with this guy.
The bridge has been a problem for a long time. It's 15 years past its life expectancy.
The holdups are special environmental interest groups. They take repeated bites at the apple.
The money is set aside. North Carolina DOT is ready. I saw the letter that the governor wrote. The governor's ready to get things moving. Our only holdup seems to be the Department of Interior and some of these special interest groups.
The U.S. Department of Interior and Southern Environmental Law Center, who's representing the special environmentalist groups, are now saying that North Carolina DOT has violated the law, they did not do it correctly, and they're pushing for another environmental impact statement, which will be probably the 7th, and will delay the project possibly as long as 3 more years.
Fish and Wildlife doesn't seem to want a road and a bridge going into their refuge. Even though there's already a road and already a bridge there, even though it's considered a gem in the refuge system, for some reason a new road and new bridge is going to be a problem. Why is a new bridge a problem? It'll be a few feet over where the old one is.
It's just very frustrating when it's a replacement project. It's not engineering something entirely new, it's a replacement project. The holdups have gotten to the point where they're ridiculous.
We're talking about human safety. We're talking about the right for the people on Hatteras Island to enjoy safe passage.
If you lose the bridge, there's no way to get to a hospital quickly.
Oh, absolutely. You have to depend on whatever medical facility you have here, which there's so much they can't do. They do a good job with what they do have. But you'll have to depend on a helicopter to get you out of here.
If there's an emergency on this island and the weather is bad, you're not going to get a helicopter down here.
We're going to have problems with our sheriff's department because we don't have the personnel on Hatteras Island to make sure that they stay safe down here. We're going to have problems with our school system, with our trash, with our electricity, with everything that we've got going on down here. Just shutting down the bridge and the utilization of that bridge is going to create all sorts of economic problems.
We're impacted enough economically now with the beach closings. But then when the bridge goes, and if it falls in again, it's going to devastate this economy. There's going to be people that have to leave here.
There's even talk of putting in ferries or something like that. Instead of bringing us into the modern age, the government is making decisions that'll send us back to the Stone Age.
Recent comments of replacing Bonner Bridge with a ferry system is a disaster for this community. Plus, it's socially irresponsible. People need to be able to get in and out of this island, this storm-prone environment.
It's not a viable option to use ferries, but it's certainly something that we're going to have to do if we keep going the way we are.
Forgive me for being naive, but how does a bridge landing impact an area more than a ferry dock?
Very good question, and it'd be great if we could have Audubon and Defenders and Southern Environmental Law Center answer that. If you were to ask them that question, they're not going to answer that. They're going to say, well, it's not the bridge that we oppose, it's the fact that they got to drive through P Island Wildlife Refuge to get down the island, and they're going to distract you to another issue. It certainly will not impact, it won't impact as much as a ferry.
I can't even wrap my mind around how no common sense seems to be being used here.
Every time we're about to start the bridge, there's another disruption. So after you see that over and over again, and then you see that also with the ORV issue, where a lot of people are trying to find the middle ground, a balanced solution, but there's no give and take on the other side. So you keep seeing that over and over and over again. You start to wonder why they're doing what they're doing.
Having watched the environmental movement, I see a clear effort to discourage human beings from coming to this national seashore by closing down access, and also, you know, as an effort to probably displace people, you know, to drive people off this island.
You know, when they make this a place where you can't get to as an average person, that means that most of America does not have the opportunity to enjoy what's here. If that's not what the American parks are for, then what are they for?
And it's almost like there's some entity out there that wants us to leave here. They're like trying to push us away. That's what it feels like to us.
It's not about the birds and the turtles any longer. It's about denying access, whether it's the bridge or the beaches.
I mean, I went to the early bird meetings very early on, and heard the Audubon get up in front of the town folk and say that they wanted to see the beaches closed.
Their goal is to close the entire beach, the Audubon Society.
Year-round, from Oregon Inlet to Ocracoke Inlet. This is what they want. This is what they've said. I've heard them say it.
So that lends again to the thought process that they're all hand in hand trying to just do away with us.
That the people should be removed from the equation, period.
It's hard not to feel right now like there's not some type of overlying, and I'm not a conspiracy theory person.
When you start killing everything and removing everything else except the bird, what else can we think?
You've got a bureaucracy and Park Service that is rolling right over my community. They do not care.
But they're getting more extremist, more militant. It's
more anti-people.
I'm the one that's being misused and abused in this scenario.
We all feel like we're getting squeezed out.
To sit here and watch a community be affected so negatively by special interest groups, I never thought it would happen in a million years.
The government, to me, is failing.
It's kind of a sad thing, you know, when you feel like you're not part of the government, but, you know, especially when you watch the news and you hear the public referred to as civilians.
To be called a visitor, I find exceedingly offensive, given that I have 4 generations buried in family cemeteries, and that my ultimate final wish is to be buried in my family cemetery, so that when my island washes away, I go with it.
This island, to me, is my home. The people here are my family.
We can provide for the animals, we can provide for the birds, we can provide for God's creatures. But we have to provide for God's other creatures, which are humans.
For Hatteras Island people, the beach is our habitat also. For us to be able to live on Hatteras Island and to survive here, we need the beach to be open. We can work with the animals. We can all have that habitat together. But the balance has been shifted now.
Right now, the future is so unknown, so uncertain for us all. We all kind of feel like that something's going to happen tomorrow. They're going to pass some new law or something like that, or something's going to happen that's going to, you know, affect us all and get us out of here.
This park was put here, it was created, it was enabled by Congress to be a recreational area. It was said, this is here for the recreation for people of the United States. It's not that. The future envisioned by Park Service and the bureaucrats is going to be without people.
John told me last night when I was talking to him that 4 days after the consent decree was enacted, they had the point roped off and the rangers were there with machine guns.
Oh, it was horrible. I personally know a guy that had a house in Buxton that sold his house. The day he saw that with the guns, he said he knew he was out of here. He said that was the end for him on Hatteras Island. And his house finally sold, and the day they moved out, his wife cried. It was sad, very sad.
If you have to leave, you have to leave. That's all. I mean, we've faced that and looked at it, and there have been some of us that over the years that have left.
What about if you had to literally move off of the island?
I'd rather not go there.
I don't even know what to think about that. It's a sickening feeling. Makes me feel sick to my stomach just you saying that.
So I'm kicking and screaming if I'm going off this island, and I can probably say that a lot of people here are going to feel the same way.
Ask me how I'd feel outraged. I'd feel definitely outraged.
I
can't imagine that there's another option. It would be devastating.
I don't know. That's a pretty crazy moment, I think, because I have no intentions of leaving as bad as it gets. I mean, I was born and raised here. I've had the pleasure of going in other places musically and experiencing the way things are, and I know based on that this is where I want to be, and this is with the people that I want to be with. And I don't think that it should get that far, that someone's going to make a decision on my children's heritage and their future on Hatteras Island. I think that's incorrect.
This is all I've known. I've been here since the 7th grade. I'm 58 years old. I don't have an idea of any place that I want to be.
And I have lived other places before. I went away to college and I got a job in the real world and lived in big cities like Tampa Bay and Baton Rouge for a while, and I hated it. I hated not having that community. I hated not waving at everybody that I met down the road and knowing everybody in the grocery store.
If I have to, I don't have a choice. You know, between this and the bridge, none of us may have a choice.
If people are driven off this island, America loses a link with its own heritage.
We're stuck in this for a long time until Congress finds it with enough courage to go ahead and change some rules to make it reasonable.
How do you bring about change? It starts with your representatives. They have to hear from you. It's what our political system is founded on. They work for us. If it happens at Cape Hatteras, it can happen at the Everglades. If it happens at Cape Hatteras, it can happen on the plains of Kansas. If it happens at Cape Hatteras, it can happen in the mountains of Idaho. It can happen on the California coast. It can happen all across the country. And unless you make a diligent effort to speak to the people who represent you, then you're not going to be happy with the outcome.
I just can't even fathom moving away from here. This is my home, and this is my life, and it's hard to even imagine having to move away from here.
But imagine it. You guys, everything's packed up. You're in the car, and you're crossing that bridge for the last time. You know it's the last time, and everything is behind you. Where are you if that ever happens?
I'm a crushed soul. Yeah. I'm a crushed soul, that's what I am.
Many of these families have been here for hundreds of years. They enjoy their environment, and they enjoy people to come and also enjoy their environment. You know, they enjoy their ecosystem. They're part of this ecosystem. The word eco comes from the Greek, it means home. This is their home. This is their ecosystem. And every human being has an inalienable right, a non-transferable right to their ecosystem. That's how I feel about it. And these people know how to take care of it. These people have taught me how to take care of it. And I, in turn, have gone back to the university and taught other people how to take care of their environment. These are some of the finest Americans I've ever met in my life, and I know Americans.
There is a place that lives in people's hearts and souls long after they've left it behind. A place with soft sands caressed by ocean waters. A place where sun and rain move in and out in a graceful dance. A place that echoes the song of laughter and whispers the secret of silence. That place is America's beach. The National Seashore on Hatteras Island. A place that belongs to you. A place where people live. place that needs our help.
I wanna ride on the wide open beaches that I love. Don't fence me out. I wanna fish wherever I wish, so don't fence me out. But there's this little thing called the Audubon Society that's out to destroy the American economy and make life harder for folks like you and me. Don't fence me out. I wanna be where there ain't no danger of getting harassed by a damn park ranger who's taking his orders from a complete stranger. Don't fence me out.
You wanna see it all your life. The ones before you did what's right. The man came in and took it all.